But a mermaid has no tears. Therefore, she suffers so much more. Today I'm showing you how to start a sculpture in polymer clay. I'm talking inspiration, concept sketch, materials and tools, and we'll get started making the head. This is CertainlyCaroline with more polymer clay fairy tale nonsense. I'll start with inspiration. What inspires you? When Michael commissioned me to sculpt a mermaid doll, I was excited. But when I learned that she was a model and a mermaid herself, I was elated. I really wanted to try my hand at a portrait doll. So definitely the first step to a great sculpture is just getting inspired. This is the first part of my YouTube series on how to sculpt a realistic mermaid doll. I'm sharing so much information that I had to split it up into a series. This video teaches how to start a sculpture and includes how to begin the head. I'll show you how to begin the face in the next video. I'm honestly not sure I can make it look like Michael, so if you give me your feedback as I make progress, I would really appreciate it. Let's move on to the second step to starting a sculpture. Sketch it out on paper. Figure out what you want to do before you do it. You need to decide on the movement of the shapes, the gesture of the pose. And what's the overall mood of the piece going to be? Will it be lonely? Hopeful? Lost? And bound? Perhaps your creation will be dreamy. What story is your sculpture going to tell? A story about overcoming? Or the weight of growing old? Or maybe your sculpture will tell of a quirky romance. The mermaid has this relationship with the water. Her hair and her hands are relaxed and flowing. Yet there's this death-like stillness about the water. And you decide on the proportions of your doll before you get out your clay with a sketch. Measure twice, cut once, right? Third thing you need to start a sculpture is materials and tools. Since we're starting with the head first, I'm just gonna go over the tools that I use for the head. I use my X-Acto to take off little specks of lint. And I usually like to do some carving after the sculpture is baked. I use the long blade to lift the face from the sculpting board, and I've got a number of wooden tools. Honestly, I don't think these guys have a name other than wooden tools. I actually checked once because I felt stupid calling it the wooden tool. I believe it's called a wooden tool. Wooden tool. My favorite one is thinner on one end than the other ones. I use the paintbrush to brush on clay smoother before I bake. And with this tool, one side has a small ball and the other side is a medium-sized ball. And it's great for sculpting the nose. This is my rubber tip tool. On one end it's pointy and on the other end it's slanted. This one is my large ball tool. And finally, I wouldn't want to try sculpting a face without this tool. It's a dental tool actually. For a clay smoother, I use orange goop. And of course we need some polymer clay. I am extremely biased toward Pro Sculpt because it's the best polymer clay ever. Enough said. Before painting, I sand my dolls. I use liquid clay when I attach the face to the ball of the head, and you're like, I don't know what she's talking about, and that's because I still need to explain it, and I definitely will in a hot second. My fourth piece of advice for starting a sculpture would be to start with the part that's most inspiring to you. Like for me, it's the head. Sculpting realistic dolls is a lot of work, and it can be intimidating to start, kind of overwhelming, like starting to pick up an incredibly messy room. 5 more minutes and then pick up your room. For me, the head is the most enjoyable part because it carries much of the personality of the piece, so I always start with the head. So to make the head, mind you, not the face, that's for the next video. Some artists make their little tinfoil ball, add a layer of clay, and off they go sculpting the face. They can do it without a hard surface to sculpt the face on. If that works for them, then most likely everything works for them. When I try that, the head gets misshapen and I end up with tinfoil showing in some places and the skin all clumps at the back of the head. It's a mess. Worse than my daughter's room. I found two methods that I like for building the head. We'll creatively call them Method 1 and Method 2. For Method 1, I form the shape of a skull with tinfoil. And then I cover that with a thin layer of clay. I smooth out a very flat egg-shaped surface for the face to go. And make a hole at the bottom for the neck. I bake it, and then I have a firm foundation to sculpt my face on. I gotta pause here to enjoy the rain for a minute. The only thing I like better than sculpting on the front porch is sculpting on the front porch with my daughters while it's raining. We always stop a minute to enjoy the fresh smell and the lovely sound, and of course, the feeling of checking on your garden and getting just a little wet in the rain. For Method 2, I place a lump of clay onto a wooden board that's comfortable to hold. Since I used my hands to form the lump, I need to scrape off a thin layer to get to the clean clay. I cut off the sides of the lump to make a very rough egg shape. For Method 1, where you're sculpting right on your baked head, you'd begin the face in the same way as I'm showing you now, with a lump of raw clay that you smooth into an egg shape. I'll get into more detail about forming the face in the next video. Using my wooden tool, I smooth out the rough edges of the egg shape. The wooden board isn't anything special. It's actually trim from my dining room table that always wanted to fall off. Once I'm done sculpting the face, I remove it from the board with a long blade and bake it. I just leave the face on the blade and put it into the oven with the blade and all. Then I make the back of the head separately. I cover a ball of tinfoil with clay. I bake the ball, then combine the ball and the face with liquid clay and some more raw clay along the seam. You want your ball to be up toward the top part of the face, though there's not a huge need to be exact because the hair covers up a whole lot. Just in general, keep in mind that the jawbone hangs down from the cranium, and bake again. Once baked, I cover the back of the face with more liquid clay. And I add a bit of tinfoil. The thickness of your clay shouldn't be more than 1/4 inch, so think of tinfoil as your friend. Hairy, tinfoil, hairy, tinfoil, tinfoil. Then I just add some pancakes of clay on top of the tinfoil, joining the face and the cranium. I just keep my oven going at 275 degrees during this process so I don't have to wait for the oven to preheat when I'm ready to bake again. This is actually a pretty quick and easy process when you just keep your oven going. It takes 15 minutes to bake Pro Sculpt clay at 275 degrees. I'll touch more on baking in a minute. You're going to want to make sure your hands are nice and clean before you start this step. I would recommend rolling a ball of scrap clay in your hands to pick up the lint and the dirt. Or don't forget, you can always use gloves. Something I especially like about Pro Sculpt is that it comes basically preconditioned. With other polymer clays, you have to kind of knead the clay first to condition it to get it to that soft state that you can easily sculpt with. I'm actually not affiliated with Pro Sculpt at all. I just love their clay. Once I've smoothed it out pretty well, I bake again. For a final round, I sand a bit first and smooth on just a little more clay and bake it one last time. Welcome to my super small back porch, and it doubles as my baking room. I have a little oven I bought just for baking polymer clay, and I keep it out here because I like to keep it in a well-ventilated room. Don't feel like you have to rush out and buy a new oven for your clay projects. I just bake clay often enough that it really made sense for me to buy a separate oven. I will say you do need an oven thermometer, however, even if you only bake polymer clay occasionally. You really have to keep a good eye on the temperature of the oven because polymer clay can easily burn if you're not careful. and the fumes of the burnt clay are toxic, which is kind of creepy, but with a thermometer, my polymer clay always turns out perfect when I bake it, and I bake all the time. Follow your clay's instruction on the package. I usually keep my oven at 275 degrees because I most often use Pro Sculpt clay. Also, the baking times differ. So for Pro Sculpt, it's 15 minutes in the oven at 275, and for Primo, it's 30 minutes in the oven at 275, I believe. Next up in this YouTube series will be a tutorial about forming the nose, and then a video dedicated to sculpting the lips and the eyes. And I plan to keep going until the doll is complete. So Michael's a YouTuber too. I'm going to leave a link in the description to her channel. She's got some great makeup tutorials that you'll love. So subscribe to both our channels and hit that bell icon so you don't miss anything.